Good morning, one and all.
Good morning.
Start with Change My Heart, O God. Change my heart, O God. Make it ever true. Change my heart, O God. May I be like you. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you. Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you.
That's what we learned last week was it should say, change my mind. Change your mind.
All right, let's pray before we begin. God, we're grateful for this chance to gather together. We come with open hearts and we come with flexibility in mind. We want to be changed. We want to be transformed. We want you to do your work in us. We pray in your name. Amen.
Flexibility in mind.
Flexibility.
Okay.
All right. I was thinking on the way here this morning about kind of like what we want out of life, and how, always thinking about how the church, we are supposed to be in tune with what God wants for us, so we should be kind of at the cutting edge of the best way to live, I guess you could say. And I think one of the things that's easy for us to do is to get caught up in the way our whole society views life, particularly as it relates to why we're here. And there's if we look at kind of like our heroes, the people that we look up to, I think we value achievement, success, and almost like superhumanness, where it's like if we can be like the best we can be and fulfill potential and stretch the boundaries and go beyond, that's kind of the idea. And then that ends up feeding into kind of the pace of the way that we live life. So it's like we need to how many books and seminars and things are on productivity and how to use our time most effectively, how to get the most done throughout the day. I don't know I don't know if this is just the way I'm feeling, but there's something in me that says what we need is balance and simplicity in order to really enjoy life and to live it the way that it's supposed to be lived.
But it fluctuates, different ages or different.
It does. It does. There's a lot more. We have a lot more idealism and drive and energy early on. We reflect less. We have less to reflect on, I guess, because we haven't been around for long. But I don't know. We look at human progress and we say, "Yay! Look how awesome we are," you know. And the thing is, like, has it been necessary and helpful for us to advance this far? I mean, it's great. We were talking about Brightline, the fast train, talking about the future of transportation. The fact that we travel in metal tubes through the skies around the world and trade with one another goods and stuff like that, that's fine. There's nothing. Well, I mean, is that really taking us ultimately to living the best way that we can, is what I wonder. I think it's great, longer lifespans, more people to enjoy things. That sounds good. But there sure is a whole lot of stuff that seems to take away from quality of life.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with how you use it. Mm-hmm. With our phones, okay, we can communicate with family and friends virtually anywhere in the world right now. Mm-hmm. And just like that. Mm-hmm. Or we can waste our time on some silly sites that all they want to do is take your money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's most of it.
It's the same device. It's not, it's not
right.
that you had to get something different to do that.
Right.
Just, thinking about that, I know I always try to find balance in my life, but I sometimes think of this often like, okay, back in the pioneer days, what would they think of where we're at now? I mean, traveling in covered wagons, and even before that.
It's not that long ago.
No, it really isn't. And yet, I agree with you as far as I think the family unit has broken down because there's so many other things to focus on, and it's good and it's not, I think. I think because phones, everywhere you walk, people are walking on their phones, in their car, in restaurants, people don't talk, and I'm guilty of it too, but
yeah.
I don't think I'm as bad as other people.
Of course not.
I'm
not as bad as you.
I think of my mother, who grew up in a little coal mining town in West Virginia with an outhouse. They had nothing, but they had love. I don't know. I just
there's something about work that's good, that's really good for the soul, good for the body, good for the person. Now, you don't want to be like a slave to work, or you don't want to be so work-oriented that you can't enjoy life, but you don't want to be so enjoying life that you never work, because you're probably not going to really enjoy it. I mean, the fact that we're able to kind of sit around and talk about this stuff shows that, like, this is a convenience to us. It's a benefit, hopefully, to us to be able to reflect on life and include God in the way that we're passing the time and thinking. But yeah, I don't know. I guess sometimes I wonder if maybe what the church can offer that's different from what everybody else is offering is living a life of balance, sustainability, simplicity. I mean, we do have brothers and sisters that are Christian that have decided to take that approach very literally. So you have, like your Amish or Mennonites that basically decided technology stops now. We don't need to advance anymore. We have what we need. And so living that way. Now there's a whole other set of things that you give up from the modern life, and it's hard work and community, and those communities can get dysfunctional and all that, just like we do. But
this morning morning I was on the phone with the cable company, you know, the robot person. I was in tears. I called my daughter and said, I'm coming to live in your shed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was
It is it can be chaotic. I can see the difference in, you know, when you are young, like you mentioned, when you're young, you are more flexible, literally and mentally, and quick to adapt to however life is. The thing is, like, with a little bit of time though, living that way, maybe we pause and say, like, is this really what I want to do? We talked about the family. I mean, one of the benefits, there was a benefit in the change of the workforce to be more open to women working, and it meant opportunity for more income. It meant for many women there was a sense of purpose there that was more appealing than the traditional stay-at-home kind of a thing, you know? Yeah, and so there's a constant. There's still the challenge of equal pay for equal work, equal opportunities for everybody. But what did happen is that it made it hard to reconfigure the family so that time was being spent on our personal lives, keeping our home, raising our children, and that type of thing. And I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the woman that stays home, but if we kind of, you know, there was a big shift from the family raising the children to some organization, daycare, public school, whatever it is, some other entity raising children. They still get raised, but it's by different people with maybe not the same perspective or sense of value and things like that. So I just wonder, as we progress and as we shift, I think it's good for us to look back at what is it that we gave up in order to get here, because it's always a set of exchanges. You know, it's always, if I grab one thing, I have to let go of something else, because we just have this limitation of 24 hours in a day. We can't increase that. You know, we have kind of set lifespans, we have set energy levels and stuff like that. So we can add and change, but what do we give up? Just to be aware of it. Some of the stuff that we give up might be a good thing, you know, but some of them may not be good things.
In the 1960s, our church in Palm Beach Gardens opened a child care center, and people quit. Women should stay at home. That was cutting edge in the late 60s.
Yes,
And then there's a lot of divorce in the 70s, and of course people were saying, I told you so. But at the same time, I think when women were too dependent on the husband could be a dictator. Mm-hmm. And once she had the balance, they're going to have to work together if they're going to stay together.
Economics kept marriage going for all that time, because there wasn't a choice. There was no choice. And suddenly, when you have a choice, you don't have to stay married to this guy. It's like, okay, if I don't have to, I surely don't want it. You know, I don't want to be in this. So, that's the shift in the definition of marriage. It shifted, not because of the change in workforce. It was already happening. Marriage became individual people with a personal relationship dedicated to living their lives with one another based on love, loyalty, sense of shared purpose. That became what marriage was all about. It wasn't about that before. It wasn't about that before. Not in the 1800s, not in the 1200s, not at the time of Jesus, not at the time of Moses. That's not what marriage was. marriage as we know it is not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. That was something else. Same name, but the definition completely different. So that's been a big eye opener for me to realize what we are doing as marriage today, what we value, what we all agree on two people and love and family. That is not what it was before. People may have had that before. I'm not saying nobody had that before, but that wasn't the primary thing. The primary thing was economics and society and networking of families, and it was something very different.
And that's been as recent as 100 years ago.
Yeah, 100, 150 at the most.
Very, very difficult for me because in my family that's happening. My daughter-in-law works, professor at a college. My grandson stays home, takes care of the two children.
Mm-hmm.
That she is raising or trying to raise a little girl to be a boy.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts us, the whole family, a lot, but we don't say too much.
Mm-hmm.
She has been fighting because she wants women not only to be equal to men, but the glass ceiling, the type of thing she wants the women to get the top jobs, never mind finances, the top jobs she wants.
Sure.
Which she said is, I don't know what the ratio is, but she told me one time.
Yeah.
Is very slim for women to be the top of the jobs.
Right.
The manager and the.
Well, just look at like the Senate or House of Representatives.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is a different mixture than it was 100 years ago, but it's not. But it's not equal to the population. The population split is, around 50-50. That's not what we see there. And CEO positions and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, boy, Claude.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when the famous CEO of GE was going to retire, he had to look around at his organization because his company was quite successful, who was most capable of replacing himself. And so I read his biography or saw him on TV, I forget which, he said he looked at all his vice presidents and he looked at his, now we call them administrative assistants, he looked at his secretary and he said, she's the one who knows what's going on and knows creative enough to keep it going. And he appointed her to replace him, but that was not organizationally a good decision in those days. That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. The evolution of human beings put the physically stronger of the two in charge because most of what was done in society at the time meant if you were stronger, you ran stuff. If you were physically stronger, you ran stuff. If somebody can beat you up, they rule over you. And so it's not until recently that we don't need to think that way, and that we can have more say-so and authority, not based on our physical differences. So that's a big part of it. Yeah, there's lots of changes that we're going through society, fast changes, especially relative to the changes that have taken place over human history. A lot of fast change in the time that we're living. So I think if the church can embrace simplicity and balance, sometimes the interpretation of that is that we need to kind of like pretend that we're living in the past and do things the way things used to be. Some churches decide to do it that way. But I don't know that's the best way to go. I think you process the changes, but always be thinking in terms of sustainability. What's going to really last for the long term? What are the consequences? What are the gradual consequences of each of these changes that we're making? Just to make a change for the moment is not always wise. We need to look long term. Sometimes changes do need to take place, and maybe they just need to take place a little bit slower, just to kind of give time for everybody to get on board and keep up. But anyway, all
The
right.
scriptures talk a lot about the things that are seen with our eyes and our senses, and the things that are unseen, which would be the fruits of the Spirit: peace, love, joy, patience, goodness, kindness, etc. And I think that there's been times when in monasteries they try to give up thinking about the things that are seen and only do the things that are of the Spirit. Well, it's hard to live a life if you don't do at least, there's your balance. You've got to have a balance between the two. And they talk about original sin. Well, my reflection on that was simply that when you're born, you're cold, you're hungry, it's weird, it's bright lights, and all of a sudden the scene dominates, and you are now struggling with remembering the spirit you come from.
Mm-hmm.
And the world drowns it out. And it keeps that way until now, like Elaine talked, at my age, the unseen can dominate because government keeps me fed and I can just reflect.
That's good. There's been religious movements that have taken on a view of simplicity that embraces things similar to the monastery, like a life of celibacy. The only problem is those movements don't last very long because there's no kids. So so it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Now, if we say, if you have a special calling to that, we could have a place for that. But to tell everybody we all need to live in monasteries, I mean, it's only going to last for a generation or two, and then it's going to stop because we're not doing the other stuff, the other parts of living.
So they usually have making wine or cookies or those cakes they have. There's a monastery in Kentucky where they make those cakes you have at Christmas time, with raisins and
the fruit cakes, yeah.
That's how it is. So they're still working. They haven't.
Right. Oh, there's still a lot of work. Yeah.
On the other hand, National Geographic has just come out. They are now designing airplanes to just go straight up and down, and people are going to have their own planes and just go that way. Whoa.
The thing is, like, why do we need to go everywhere? I mean, it's fun. It's fun to travel and stuff like that, but yeah. All right, let's catch up. We're gonna be finishing up 7 today. So in the 12 steps, we're admitting we're powerless over our addiction. We're believing a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. We're turning our decision. We made a decision to turn our will and lives over to God. We make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We admit to God and ourselves and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We're entirely ready to have God remove the defects, and then we ask. That's where we're at in 7, is ask. I watched a series recently that had one of the siblings in this family was addicted to heroin, and he joined a recovery program where he lived on site, and they mentioned the steps in this show, and they talked about how many people get lost at step 4. I don't know, have you found that to be kind of true? That's kind of where it's like
they're too afraid to deal with that, and they end up relapsing over it.
Because the first thing, admitting there's a problem with addiction. Is this too small?
Well, I can't read what it says up there. So you're talking about.
Is that a little bit bigger?
Inventory. Okay.
Yeah, inventory. And I can.
Well, I have a very
do
personal
that, too.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Reading all of this, my friends are gone, 90% of them. There's no way I can find somebody to say I did wrong or can I help, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody left that I can do that with.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one, obviously, millions of people can. What do you do then? Just pray?
Prayer is a part of it because we're admitting to God, we're admitting to ourselves. So those two things are very important. They're big things. Um, in terms of another person, one of the things that people do is they'll admit things to a professional like a therapist. Some people will admit things to clergy. Sometimes the clergy is the last person you want to admit something to. Sometimes there is a practice, and this wouldn't fully take the place of a friendship, but sometimes you can write a letter to someone who was a friend who's passed on. And if you're writing a letter, you're kind of engaging your communication in a different way than you're admitting to yourself. So if you went through the practice and you say, I really believe my friend can hear me right now because my friend is in eternity and with God, and I want to have a conversation with my friend, and I know I'm probably not going to hear back, but this is what I want to say to you, friend. And just imagine if I were sitting with my friend and I wrote what I would say. I can write, and then with that piece of paper, sometimes people will catch it on fire. Just make sure you don't burn anything down. Some people will put it in the trash can or rip it up or bury it or something like that. But that is a way, at least like in grief recovery, sometimes that has to be done. Sometimes, for example, you need to, we'll get to this here when we're asking for forgiveness from people. Sometimes a person that you need to ask forgiveness of is, you don't know where they are, you wouldn't know how to get in touch with them, or they have passed on, they're not alive anymore. So writing a letter to somebody, sometimes that's a way to do it.
I know that works because in hard times in my life, I wrote Dear Abby, but I never mailed it because writing the question, then you say, well, how would she answer this? She clarifies you clarified the problem, so now she can, in your head, creatively help you solve that problem.
Right. Our brain is wired to talk to ourselves a certain way and to talk to other people a different way. So the way that I talk to you is not the way I talk to myself. And I don't know exactly what's happening with that difference, but writing a letter to someone, I think you may be able to shift over to that other part of yourself and just say things to a friend that you might not want to look in the mirror and say to myself. Because sometimes there are some things we can admit to ourselves that we can't admit to other people. There are some things we can admit to other people, but we can't admit to ourselves. So that's probably why we need both. Now, don't also think this. It is very hard to admit to someone else, especially if it's something where we really have to trust somebody. And if we want it to remain confidential, the best way to keep a secret is to never tell anybody. Because people don't keep secrets.
God.
No.
I mean, people don't.
I
People
know.
don't keep secrets.
I would say, don't tell me a
You disagree with that?
Yeah, some people do, because that's a practice that I really.
Well, I would say your chances of it staying a secret decrease at least some.
I think it has to be somebody you really trust, and I was gonna say something else when you were talking, and now I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it has to be somebody you really trust, and then once you share it, it's not yours anymore. I mean, you let it go, and whatever happens, happens, so, yeah, there is that,
Right.
you might trust someone.
Well, that's the thing to consider is like, what am I trying to do in keeping this a secret?
Oh, I know
Yeah.
what I was gonna say, but we have a saying, we're only as sick as our secrets too. So,
Oh,
Right.
that's right. Interesting.
so,
That's good.
you know, if we keep those secrets, I mean, some of them, like, I would never want anybody to know maybe something in particular.
Yeah.
But the longer I bury that, and that's a lie I have to live with, or
Right.
not a lie maybe, but it's a lie that I tell or I don't tell, I lie through omission, and then just, it might be something that I can't let go of, so it makes me sicker because I'm still just stuffing the feelings or the thought or.
There is a difference between telling another person and telling a friend or confidant. There is some benefit just to telling another person, period. So you could get on a plane, go to another city, walk down the street and say, hey, I know you don't know me, but can I tell you something? And you tell them, and then you leave and you never see them again. Don't introduce yourself. Don't tell them your name. Don't give them your phone number. Just tell somebody and then walk away.
It's
And
my burden.
yeah. And because the thing is, some of the secrets we keep a secret because we know that it's going to have an impact. And it may impact our friends or our family if we tell them our secrets in a bad way. We may be giving them a burden, and there's no benefit at all to them. It's just a burden, and that's it. That's when we do premarital counseling before someone gets married. There's always the conversation of how much do I share with my spouse? How much do I share about my past? How many details do I get into? And you have to make a decision. You want to be honest with who you are, but there are some details that there's no benefit at all to the other person for them to know about. And discerning what to share is hard. It's hard to know. It takes wisdom to know what to share. So sometimes it's better not to share simply because we're hurting other people and not helping other people. On the other hand, friendship and love means we're willing to bear one another's burdens. So if I have a close friend, there might be some stuff that I can share with my friend that won't benefit them, that will be a burden for them, but then I'll say in exchange, let me take some of your burden. And so I lighten your load and you lighten my load. There's that as well.
But then the Catholic people that talk what
Like confession? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can share their burden, but they don't get any feedback from the priest.
No, the priest may make some suggestions. It's not a therapy session, but the priest may make some suggestions that essentially a priest is dealing with sin, something that's a sin. And so there may be some sins where there's a suggestion you need to ask forgiveness of this person that you have wronged. You need to ask God for forgiveness, there is usually something that the priest will say that's kind of helps you to kind of make things right. So some of penance would mean, sometimes it means praying extra Hail Marys. Sometimes it means, spend your time and give back to some people in need because you've taken too much from others. So penance is kind of like making amends for what's been done. But
I'm not an expert on sins, but to me, I don't remember every single thing someone says. And one time a friend told me, well, my husband has a big chin, and she said, don't tell anybody, that's a secret. Well, every time I
It's
saw
not
it,
a secret.
and I forgot
Oh,
she
it's
said it was a secret.
Oh,
But she said she had an affair. If I might tell her to go to counseling, but I wouldn't tell her husband unless
Right.
she's had a lot of affairs. Because I know that's a secret.
Yeah.
Another time, a man came to a church committee meeting, wanted to fire the minister because he counseled a relative who was cheating on his wife.
Mm.
I came home and I called my best friend, they want to fire the minister. Well, of course, she was his relative, called her relatives, and of course now the whole family's squabbling about what he did. And he was angry at me because he told the committee in confidence. It was a secret.
Yeah.
And he was scolding me for it. And I said, well, that's what ministers do, is they counsel people, but secrets are not usually that helpful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also
I mean, there are some confidences that are good to keep. There are some secrets that are good to keep. We protect each other, but like you were saying, Patty, we're only as healthy as our secrets, only as sick as our secrets. So there is a sense that, like, the less secrets we carry around, the better. You know, what are we trying to do by keeping secrets?
Yeah, part of me is, and this is just my experience, but when I talk about secrets, I'm talking about things that maybe I have done or I'm ashamed of or feel guilty about, and I don't want to tell someone. And for me, that's the fifth step, really, where I'm sharing something with someone that I have picked to trust.
Right.
Some of the things that I feel like we're talking about now, I feel like is more the eighth step, where you were talking about who do I talk to, or when I want to make amends, basically, or I've done something wrong to someone, and it also talks about it, you know, unless to go to them would do harm to them or to ourselves.
Okay.
And sometimes it's not good to, like, I had an affair with your husband, you know. I don't think it's important to go to that, and it's been years, like, to go to that person.
Right.
But I live my life in a different way today.
Right.
I would never choose that behavior today.
Right.
If I was unhappy in my marriage or a relationship or whatever, I would talk to the person about it, or write a letter, or do it in another way. So, I mean, that's kind of my
So there's things that we've done.
But we do
There are things that we've done that don't necessarily impact other people, but they do impact us,
Yeah.
our relationship with God. And then there are things that we've done that have impacted other people.
That's what I feel like, where we
Right.
make amends, and sometimes we can't do it directly, or
Is
they're gone. Or
the inventory, is that both of those
I
things?
think so. The inventory, from my experience, when I do a fourth step and I'm writing everything out that I can think of that I've done in my life, or whether I know if it's important or not, and then I might see patterns in my behavior or how I've dealt with certain things in my life, and I can look back. Somebody else can be more objective maybe than I can, because all I can see is, oh, I'm a horrible person. Somebody else might say, well, you did that out of protection, you know, in whatever situation you were in, for survival or whatever. And then the sixth and the seventh step, where we look at our, you know, after doing that inventory, we look at our defects, and then step 7, you know, we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And sometimes I struggle with knowing what my defects are, or I don't think it's a defect, but somebody else might go, well, yeah, you know, look at this. And then 8, you know, I decide if I'm going to I make a list, you know, of the, it doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but I make a list of what those amends are. And then at 9 is where I decide who I'm going to make amends to. And again, you can't always do it in person, and
Right.
but that's where we kind of read.
So we're kind of dealing with our own stuff toward the beginning, and then gradually we're making changes that affecting other people.
I've done anything, or I haven't affected anybody else's life.
Right.
You know, when I look back, I
Kind of need some clarity on what we've
directly or
done.
indirectly.
Is the inventory good and bad, or is it usually just the bad?
No, it's everything.
It's everything.
Yeah. I think what I found for me in the 6th step, you know, I might just go, oh my God, you know, such is horrible, or I did this, this, and this. No, we have assets too, and we have to balance the assets.
Right, right.
I think sometimes it's hard for me, I can only talk about me, to acknowledge maybe the good things. Maybe I don't see them and somebody else does.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's
Right.
why you know.
And that would kind of be a defect that you would ask God to heal, is help me to see more, to see myself like you see me.
The balance, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like I believe God loves me no matter what.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying I don't disappoint him, but I think no matter what I do, and this is just for me, I don't believe there's anything I can do to make God love me more, and I don't think there's anything I can do to make God love me less.
Yeah.
That's just for me.
Yeah.
That's my belief. But
Yeah.
When I was looking at this, you know, the chapter 8, I thought, who have I harmed? And then we were talking about boundaries, and I thought, wait, who have I allowed to harm me because I didn't set boundaries?
Right.
That's good. You're
Right.
looking at it, so something you can control.
Yeah, and
Right.
there was a lot of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
I have to take this.
Go ahead.
I have to.
So there is the acknowledgement of how much did somebody kind of take advantage of me, force themselves or manipulate me. But on the other hand, how much did I not put my foot down, did not say no, did kind of gave in when I knew better? That's a tricky one to navigate because we can the balance can be off. We could blame ourselves too much, or we could blame the other person too much. And knowing where that lies. You know, if you're looking back and it's like, you know, as a child, an adult did this to take advantage of me. Well, you have to really view that through the eyes of how old you were at the time and what you could and couldn't do, and being told by other people that that's your fault or things like that. That's something to work through, where it's like, God, give me the right perspective of this so that I can take only what I'm truly responsible for and then place whatever other people are responsible for on them, and then know what next step to take. But that, again, that's really tricky along the way to know
When it
who's
comes
responsible for what.
to, you know, the admission part where you admit to other people, whatever. The tricky part of that, for me, I think, is I may think, oh my gosh, I did X, Y, and Z, and it's really on a scale of 1 to 10, it's off the chart. And you tell somebody about what you did, and they kind of look at you like, that's it?
Is that all?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, and I've had that happen, where
Sure.
it's no big deal. Or somebody has admitted something to me, and they go like, oh, okay, so.
And if you
it's
looked,
not that big a
if you
deal.
did the full inventory over your life, you might, like you said, Patty, recognize these patterns of, I thought this was a bigger deal, this and this and this and this, and then I realized, oh, there's a pattern of me taking on more of a sense of responsibility or guilt or shame over something that really
Some of it can be
was not.
taking it out of context.
Mhm.
If you got to really keep it, you know, how you may have looked at something in the past on what you may or may not have done. Somebody else, you know, if you try and tell somebody about it, you can't tell them the whole story because it would take too long. And you know, and there's a lot of things to the story that are relevant, and some that aren't relevant, and they're still part of the story. Though.
Right, right.
And we're always so much harder on
Oh
ourselves
God.
Yeah.
than anybody else is.
Yeah,
Most
that's
of the time.
Well,
yeah,
You know, we
that's
are hard
that's
on
common
ourselves.
for sure.
Bob, you're saying to you it's a big deal and to them it's nothing.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you can feel like you have really just
The loss.
did somebody wrong. It may have been 10 years ago, it may have been 10 minutes ago. And the way you felt about what you did and the way they felt about what you did, isn't necessarily the same thing. I mean, you may both be right on target, but a lot of times, you know.
And it can go the other way as well, where we're not aware of what the impact was that we had on somebody else, and we kind of need to be called out. It's like, when you said this, when you did this, it really
My whole world crashed.
it really devastated the other person. I mean, to hear from another person the impact of what we said and did on them is, you know, sometimes we need to wake up call there. And then we also have to be aware some people are overly dramatic and sensitive. And so we got to take that into account as well. They're getting hurt about everything from everybody. They're just,
When you're writing these lists, do you find that there's a pattern to what you've been doing in any way?
Yeah, I think so. Some are more obvious than others, but then and sharing that, like, we've all talked about, sometimes I'm harder on myself and I'm sharing something that maybe I've not told anybody that for me was horrible. Somebody else that might not have been.
If you're writing this, I'm saying, gee, I was very critical. I am critical. You read the list, whatever it might be. You find out a little more about yourself, don't you?
Yeah. And then as we go through the steps and move forward,
Sure.
I can become, because I learn these things more aware, I can become more accountable. I check myself when I do something or think something. No, I'm not always, because I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm more aware of, like, what were my motives? Was that for them or was that for me? Or,
Yes. That's good.
and the steps are ongoing. And
Yeah.
when I get to 12, and it's just a way of
Is part of the admittance, is that like, okay, we're admitting to others what we have done to them and how they felt about us. Is part of the admitting part, is it what someone has done to you, gone to them and said, hey, when you said this X, Y, and Z, it really crushed me that really bad. Is that part of it?
For me, it's more looking at me. It's like when I'm doing an 8-step or I'm making amends, it's
Okay.
like I caused harm or I felt like I did something wrong. And also with that goes, I'm doing it for me, not for the hope that you'll forgive me. You might go, I don't care, or I hate you. Or,
I still hate your guts, yeah.
I'm not responsible for the reaction. I have to do it for me, not to hurt them, but to make amends, to apologize for something I've done or said or that I feel like.
No, you can't expect someone to say, oh, I'm so glad you said that, I forgive you, blah, blah, blah. No, you can't expect that. It's got
But that's
it's
the
strictly a
whole
one,
funny,
it's a,
if somebody forgives you, yeah, but I can't.
you have to go into it thinking that all you're doing
I
is
did
you're getting
wrong,
this
and
off
I'm
your
trying to
chest
make
and letting them
amends.
know
Yeah,
that, you feel bad. If they forgive you, fine. If they don't, they don't.
yeah. And it's all
Some
kinds of
of-
amends. It could be emotional, financial,
Mhm.
all kinds of
Some of the, I've heard, with some support groups, one of the guidelines often is to speak using I and me.
Yeah, me.
And so, because it's easy when you're sitting in a group setting to tell a story and you end up talking about another person. And it's like, this person said this, and then they did this, and then and that's not the purpose of these steps. The purpose of these steps is for me to look at myself. Now you could,
Very selfish. That's the whole point.
It-
I find that would be very selfish.
well,
To do which.
to only focus on ourselves, or to talk about the other people.
No, yourself.
Well, I'm talking.
You're dumping all of this in your whatever it is. That's a selfish thing to do. You don't see it that way. Okay.
Well, we are created as social creatures, and we're not created to live just on our own, just by ourselves. So we have to learn how to interact with other people and share with other people our lives. I think in these group settings, probably the balance has got thrown off somehow in a person's life, and they're going through life hurting themselves and people around them without realizing it. So this is coming back and admitting where we have gone wrong and how life has impacted us. And we're sitting in a group setting where everybody is doing this. And so it's not only my job to talk, that's just a portion of the time. Another part of my job in a group setting is to listen to every single person who's there. So nobody can know what your experience is and what you've gone through unless you share it. And sometimes you don't even know the full impact of what you've gone through until you say it. So its purpose is therapeutic, and it is not meant to always be looking at me. There is a downside to only looking at me. And yeah, that can be selfish. But
Thinking, one little sentence, my husband died and I refused to cry because that's selfishness. I'm crying for me, not for him.
You have a right
So
to
these
know.
little things, and I'm saying,
yeah, well,
Well, more
I think I maybe what we need to do is to clarify what it means to be selfish. I think being selfish means that it's like you're only thinking about myself and I don't care about anybody else around me. And this way of thinking is more like, if I'm not healthy, then I end up getting everybody else sick. If I'm not taking care of myself to make sure I'm a good person, then I will spread that and affect everybody else. So in some way, I do need to be self-centered in order to like do things thoughtfully and wise and the right way. But I'm also connected to these other people. So it's like you should feel sad if somebody you love dies. You should feel sad that he's gone, but you should also feel sad for yourself because you just lost something very precious to you.
Part of your life.
And you gave a lot of love, and so therefore you will experience pain. So it's not only is it okay to cry, it's healthier if you do cry. And actually crying along with somebody else actually kind of makes it a little bit more real. So maybe that's a different way of thinking than some people have thought before. But like, I want you to share your feelings and your experiences. As your friend, I want you to share them. I want you to be able to cry as you share what you've gone through, because I care for you and I want to empathize with you, and I want to like give you my love while you're going through that so that you can heal through it and stuff like that. So if all of us just kept everything to ourselves, we would just be very different creatures.
That would be selfish.
And there, I was
Yeah.
thinking about selfish, and there's two different selfish. There's that haughty selfish where you think, I am all this, being, but then there's the humble selfish, where I need to take care of myself, and I'm humble, and
Right.
it's
Yes, that's
okay.
Now maybe Elaine, maybe what you're talking about is there is an unhealthy way to do that, where if a person is always saying, poor me, poor me, poor me, and then focusing so much on themselves that they're not concerned with all the poor other people that are around them. So there is some kind of a balance there of like, I do need to look at myself, I do need to look at other people, but I do need to look at myself, but I do need to look at other people, and we don't want to keep it, because it can be unhealthy for me to only focus on the needs of other people. And some people, sometimes that's looked at as like saintly, but what can happen is if we only care for other people, we're probably going to end up being less effective in the long run, because we also have to care for ourselves along the way. This is where the boundaries come in. So you can have somebody, it's not uncommon for a mother to just be completely and totally giving to all the family and all the kids and not care for themselves. But then what can happen is health problems and
Selfish children.
and then it turns out selfish children, because then they feel that they're always entitled.
Yeah.
So there's a balance of care for yourself so that you can be healthy and strong to care for the people around you. So it's a both. I'm doing this so I can be healthy and be a good, loving friend and person. But if I don't do it, my capacity will be lessened if I'm not watching out for myself a little bit. It is a balancing act, though. Yeah, it's a balancing act. Some people will be told, you're not sharing enough. You need to share some more. We want more of you. And others are like, okay, that's enough. It's not all about you. It needs to be about other people. So there is a healthy balance of some sorts. It goes from, I mean, a narcissist completely lacks the capacity for empathy, cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes, and is so unbalanced in that way that they end up being a bull in a china shop. They just ruin everything around them, and they like it because it shows how strong they are and how much power they have and gets attention, But then on the other hand, a person can also be like, they're a puddle on the ground that everybody steps in, and then, you know what I mean? So you don't want to be one extreme or the other, some kind of a balance in there. So this inventory should help us with our balance a little bit.
I have to add an ending to that story about the guy who came to committee meeting wanting to fire the minister, and I called his name. He yelled at me a month later when he saw me at Publix that I was, I told his secret. Well, he never said it was a secret, but I did feel guilty because I realized in that last month or two I caused chaos in the family because people didn't know her father-in-law was having an affair, et cetera, et cetera. But about a year later, he came up so I also felt guilty then. I caused chaos. But a year later, he came up to me and he said, I apologize for what I said at the committee meeting because I've learned I have to give up drinking. So I always felt if I caused a problem for somebody, it was because I shouldn't have said what I said. And I realized sometimes people can be upset, and that was just a part of the deal.
It can be very challenging to know when to open your mouth and when to close your mouth. It can be a challenge to know what is my responsibility and what's not my responsibility. So there are some things that I might know about people, but it's not my place or my responsibility to get involved any more than that. Sometimes, as a pastor, people will ask you to get involved in things that are not my place to get involved with. It's not uncommon for a pastor to be asked, can you talk to my husband because he needs to counsel with you? My husband has a problem. He needs to counsel with you. Well, he needs to come and talk to me because if he can't take the initiative and the responsibility of just getting the ball rolling, he's not going to change. He's not going to,
You're sure not going to listen to you.
So
figure it's an intrusion.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Your wife is gonna be the one
or
that
somebody will
listens.
even say like, my husband wants you to call him. It's like, oh,
Does he really?
I've heard this before. Yeah. So yeah, this has to do with boundaries, responsibilities. It's balance. Some people need to step up. Some people need to step back.
Too, don't you think? People make the world go round, and we're all products of our environment, and we could be in the same situation, but I would view it or handle it differently than you would, just because of what I was taught or what I learned, or through whatever method I learned it.
Yeah.
So, isn't that's like there's three sides to the story?
Yes.
Your side, my side,
and the truth.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you're hearing the story and somebody is just a complete monster and did everything 100% wrong, and it is just it's almost like a cartoon character
Yeah.
that's being drawn for this story. That's not reality. We're not like that. We're more complicated than that. There are motives, there are perspectives, there are a lot of things, there's history, there's a lot of things that take
There's parts of
place.
the story that are left out.
Parts of the story, yes. When we retell stories, we don't include everything.
No.
We include the parts that make it our
Is it
story.
a good story?
Sometimes we're nicer than we really were, and some people are more aggressive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how about when you do something and you don't think it's wrong, but the other person totally thinks it's wrong?
Right.
And I'm thinking, I'm not gonna forgive, I'm not gonna go make amends, because
Right.
I don't think what I did was wrong.
Well, this is a conversation that Sully had with Ian when they were little, and it was either with Ian or David, one of our boys, when they were younger. He did something that hurt another friend's feelings, and for him, I mean, he didn't feel anything, and so the lesson is, if somebody that is your friend had their feelings hurt by something that you did or said, it's important to acknowledge that. And sometimes it doesn't mean that it's your fault. You can't make somebody feel a certain way, but you can do things that trigger things that make people feel a certain way. This is the big thing now about, safe spaces and people being triggered and stuff like that. If I say this and it hurts your feelings, I need to take responsibility for it. Well, it's not that simple, So if a person is your friend, if I call my friend a doo-doo head and it really hurts their feelings, right? And then but then I call another friend doo-doo head, and feelings are not hurt. They think it's funny, So, but the thing is, it's good to have that conversation, to be aware that when this person hears these words, it really affects them a certain way. We don't know exactly why. It could be that person had an older brother that used to hit him really hard and call him doo-doo head all the time. I mean, we don't know that part of the story. So at least having that conversation, and sometimes it's just like, I'm sorry that when I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. I mean, I'll learn from now on that I won't use that word with you, but
how
but
about
on-
you call
but-
them doo-doo head, and then they say, well, I'm not your friend anymore.
Well, that's okay.
well, if that's all it took to lose the friendship, then maybe it wasn't worth
Not much
it.
of a friendship there.
If you want to keep the friendship, then maybe you get into, I don't want to lose this friendship. What can I do to make it better? And then you kind of fix things. But you may be learning along the way. This is going to be like walking on eggshells to be in a relationship with this person.
Yeah.
Then it's like you can just say, it was nice being your friend for a while. We're done, doo-doo head.
I want to leave you with one final
Well,
thought.
All right. All right, let's read our last sentence from the book for 7, and then we will at least say that we're done with 7.
Yeah, right.
All our faults and ego possessions are just heavy and burdensome luggage that keep us from walking through this always open gate, or even seeing it in the first place. All our faults and ego possessions are just heavy and burdensome luggage that keep us from walking through this always open gate, or even seeing it in the first place. So the gate of heaven is everywhere. This is kind of entering into the presence of God, the kingdom of God, the way of Christ, entering into this lifestyle of living the abundant life. Our faults, and the doo-doo head thing, we're on a roll here. Our faults and ego possessions are heavy and burdensome luggage that keep us walking through these things. So, ego possessions, this is maybe our way to try to control life. Our holding on to a false sense of self, and then there are faults. All of these things, these defects, these are the things that keep us walking through this always open gate. So it's not. Maybe it's better to say it's not that God is closing the door on us. The door is always open, but we are just burdening ourselves down with all our stuff that we can't even see the gate. Or we can't even get through it because we're just carrying so much. So
I can visualize
somebody
walking and they're just.
I think there's a scene. Pilgrim's Progress is kind of a classic Christian morality tale, and I think there is a part there where Pilgrim, which is the name of the main character, is trying to go through a doorway, and I think the burden is too heavy. So how do you let go of your burden? Your burdens, these are your faults, your ego possessions. So we'll pick up on 8 next time.
Whoa.
And
Yay, thank you. This was very.
Payback.
try to inch our way
I'm
along.
looking for.
Payback. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the world. May each thought and word bring glory to your name. Send us out in your Spirit, Lord, we pray. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the